Here's the feedback to question 2 then, which you'll remember asks you to explain what factors need to be considered before deciding whether to teach a skill by progressive part practice. Now, as before, I would highly recommend that you identify exactly what progressive part practice is. And if you do that, you will see that you'll actually get some credit for that, because it says here explanation of progressive part practice. So you need to be sure that you know that with progressive part practice you learn the first stage, and then once you've learned the first stage you add the second stage to it, and then you complete stage 1 and stage 2 together, and then you add the third stage and you put stage 1 and stage 2 and stage 3 together, and you'd carry on in that cycle in that way. And that, as you may remember from your classroom work, is called chaining, where we will do skill A or part of skill A, then skill B, and then put A, B together, and then we'll do C, and then we'll put A, B and C together, and then we'll do D, and then we'll put A, B, C, D together. That's exactly what part progressive practice is, and it's clear that you need to be able to show your understanding of what that means. If you do that, you're going to score at least 1 mark. Moving on, as with the question above, when we're considering how we're going to practice, it will depend upon the nature and the type of the skill or the task that we're focusing on. And please remember that the practices relate to the skill that we're looking to develop rather than playing a game. One or two of you fell into that trap and that misconception. So depending on the nature or the type of the task or the skill, if part of the skill can be broken down into parts, into subroutines, if it's a complex skill, which is what that means, or if it's a series skill, then we would use the part progressive practice. However, if it's a simple skill that doesn't need to be broken down, or if it's a rapid or ballistic movement there, then we would use whole practice. And it's important that you refer back to the question, because it says, well, you need to consider what factors you need to consider when deciding upon which type of practice. So you will talk in the positive about, I would use progressive part practice in some of these situations. However, in others it would be better to use a different type of practice, as in this case, whole practice for simple, rapid and ballistic movements. Again, keywords here, this idea of the feel or the kinesthesis or the kinesthetic awareness of the whole movement. Okay, so progressive part or whole we might use in order for the learner or the individual to gain that feel or kinesthetic awareness. All right, however, if we just did part practice, i.e. we looked at each individual component on their own, and remember part is different from progressive part, then there's a danger that the performer or the learner may lose the kinesthetic awareness of the movement. All right, so moving on from there, similarly as to the question before, if you listen to that we might choose part or part progressive if there's an element of danger, i.e. we don't want them to look to do the whole skill in one go, because that might be dangerous for them. It also depends upon their stage of learning, and I emphasize again here the need to make sure that you focus on this terminology, the stage of learning, rather than their age. As we've said before, age does not necessarily indicate their stage or their experience of learning. So let's make sure we use the stage of learning. We might say that the more experienced they are as a performer, the more we might encourage them to practice as a whole, the skill as a whole, rather than part progressive for the novice or the learner who's trying to develop their understanding of what's required in order to complete the skill or learn the skill. As before, this type of practice also depends upon the level of motivation, and we would expect, or we would need, our performers, our learners to be relatively highly motivated in order to practice in this method through progressive part practice, and also that due to the very nature that we're breaking things down and looking at things in isolation and building them back up again, this clearly is going to be time consuming. So again, although there's only 6 marks available, you need to make sure that you're making 6 or more different points, and I emphasize that word different points, in order to create a response of high quality and substance.